So at this point, we all know the story. Mr. Haggerty and I had an argument about this problem. We went through it on Monday. I think Mr. Haggerty gave out free homework passes just to get people to agree with him. Words have been exchanged, and we've escalated. So Mr. Haggerty has enlisted the Jedi because he thinks he's representing truth. I've enlisted the Sith because, frankly, I just want power. Here's a picture somebody took on their phone from, I think, late Monday night. There's Mr. Haggerty back there. I think that's me back there. Um, and we've had a number of battles over these last couple days. Uh, and I want you to see if you can figure out who's won some of these battles. So, for context, the red lightsabers are going to represent negative, and the green lightsabers are going to represent positive. Now, the red lightsabers, you'll notice that we know -10 is less than -4 because it's further to the left. Just like 4 is less than 10 because it's further to the left. However, it's also important to notice that -10 is pretty powerful because that's further from 0. Just like 10 is more powerful than 4 because it's further from 0. So it's a different way to think about these numbers in terms of their power or their force. And we're going to look at that today to help us add without a number line. So let's look at a couple of these battles. Here's a battle between Mr. Haggerty and I want to see if you can figure out who won. All right. If you said the Sith won, you are correct because there are more Sith than there are Jedi. So this guy defeated this guy, 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 and there's 3 left. So whose force was more powerful? The Sith, because 8 negatives is more powerful than 5 positives. How would you write this as a math problem? You would write it -8 plus 5 because there's 8 bad guys or negatives and 8 good guys or positives. We know that we could also write this as -8 plus +5, although we don't normally write that positive sign when a number is positive. So the final result would be -3 because there are 3 more negatives than there are positives. Let's look at another example. This was the battle that we've had on Lake Michigan. It's a pretty epic battle. And I want you to see if you can figure out who won. Well, if you said nobody, you're right. We canceled each other out because there was 10 Sith and 10 Jedi, and each one canceled each other out. Nobody won. How would you write that as a math sentence? Well, you would write -10 plus +10 because there was 10 Sith and 10 Jedi, 10 negatives and 10 positives. And we know that the final result would be 0 because -10 plus 10 we also call what? Correct. And -10 plus 10 we call opposites. They become 0. Now, this is the final battle that Mr. Haggerty and I had, and there's so many soldiers there I couldn't make the picture, so I just wrote the numbers. -67, so we had 67 negatives or 67 Sith. We had 45 Jedi. And the way to write that would be -67 plus +45. Whose force was more powerful? Well, if you said Sith, you're right. The Sith is more powerful because there was more negatives than there were positives. And what's the final result? Well, let's talk about how to figure that out without a calculator and without a number line. These are the rules for adding when you have negatives. So there's 2 kinds of battles when you have negative numbers. The first kind is what I like to call unite. And that's when 2 signs are the same. In other words, the same team joins the same team. You get more reinforcements. And what that might look like is this. You might have -6 plus -7. That's when the signs are the same. Well, how do you do that? Well, the first thing you do is you just look at the forces. In this case, there are 6 Sith and 7 Sith. So I'm just going to write 6 plus 7. Now, in math language, we call that absolute value. I like to call it the force. The force of -6 is 6, because that means there's 6 soldiers from the bad side, and the force or absolute value of -7 is 7 because there's 7 soldiers from the bad side. So if you have a unite situation where you're adding and the signs are the same, you simply take the absolute values and add them, then go back and label it which team would have won. Well, since it's all Sith or all negative, I'm going to go back and label it as -13. So again, if you have two negatives that you're adding, that's called a unite. You take the force of those soldiers, which is called the absolute value, you add them up, and then you label it with whoever won, in this case, the Sith, because they're both negative. Here's a situation where you have Jedi and more Jedi. Well, they're both positive, so you take the how many soldiers? You had 6 soldiers Jedi and 5 Jedi soldiers. You added an 11. And then you say, well, who won? Well, they were all Jedi, all positive. So I write positive 11, or as we said, we can just write 11. What happens if you have a situation where the signs are different, like we saw up above? Well, that's what I like to call a destroy situation. That means that there are some good and some bad, and you got to see who wins out. Well, how do you figure those out? Well, here, if you have a situation like 6 plus -7, you look at the forces from each team and you subtract them to see who would win out, just like we did up here. We look at the forces from each team and we subtract them. There's 8 bad guys and 5 good guys. That means there's 3 left over. So in this case, there's 7 bad guys and 6 good guys. That means there's 1 left over. But then you got to go back and see who won. Well, in this case, the Sith won because there's more Sith than there are Jedi. So you would label that as -1. So 6 plus -7 would be -1. Down here, you have 6 plus -5. Well, this means there's 6 Jedi and 5 Sith. So the first thing you want to do, since this is a destroy, because there's some good and some bad, they're going to see how much they cancel each other out. So you say 6 minus 5 is 1. And in this case, there's 1 left over, but it's from the Jedi, from the good guys, because there's more good than bad. So I would label the answer as +1 or just 1. Well, let's look at a couple of examples. So what's this situation? -14 plus -1, unite or destroy? Should have said unite, because the signs are the same. Which force is more powerful, positive or negative? You should have said negative, because the signs are both negative. Now the force, you should realize, is 15. It's 15 because you add the answers, you add the forces, the powers, or the absolute value. So it's 14 bad soldiers and another bad soldier would be 15 bad soldiers. And then there you would label it as -15 because they're all negative. How about this one? -14 plus 19. Is this unite or destroy? Should have said destroy because the signs are different. Whose force is more powerful? You should have said positive. I know it's positive because there's more positives than there are negatives. And what do? When I destroy, I simply subtract to see how many soldiers are left over, and there's 5 soldiers left over. Because I say 19 minus 14. Then I look to see how many are left over. Are they on the good side or the bad side? They're on the positive side, the good side. So I'm going to say the answer is +5 or just 5. I also could write that problem as 19 plus -14 or 19 minus 14. These all mean the same thing. How about this? 17 plus -27. Is this a unite or destroy? You should have said destroy because the signs are different, so they're going to cancel each other out. Who's more powerful here? Should have said negatives. The negatives are more powerful because you can see -27 is more powerful than +17. And again, when I destroy, I subtract the values to see how many soldiers are left over. There's 10. But I got to see on what side. Well, since the Sith or the negatives were more powerful, I'm going to say there are 10, -10 left over, or the answer therefore is -10. Another way to write this problem instead of 17 plus negative 27, I could have said 17 minus positive 27. Let's do two more. How about this one? 14 plus 1. Does this unite or destroy? It said unite because the signs are the same. Whose force is more powerful? Positive because they're both positive. How do you figure out unite problems? You simply add the absolute values, in this case 14 plus 1, and get 15. Then you add the right sign. Well, since positive 1, I'm going to write positive 15 or just 15. And of course, another way to write this problem, you might see 1 plus 14 is the same as 14 plus 1. And this last one, 32 plus negative 32. Is this unite or destroy? Should have said destroy because the signs are different. Whose force is more powerful? Well, it's actually neither, right? Because 32 good guys and 32 bad guys, nobody has the advantage. How do you figure out destroy problems? You subtract the absolute values. The absolute value of 32 is 32. The absolute value of negative 32 is 32. Subtract them, and you get 0. Therefore, the answer is 0, which is neither positive or negative because nobody won. Another way to write this problem is 32 minus positive 32 or 32 minus 32.